Welcome to Have You Read It, the channel where we bring books to life, one summary at a time. Whether you're here for self-help, personal growth, or business inspiration, there's something for everyone. Today, we're exploring Robert Cialdini's Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion. This book explores the psychology of why people say yes and how to apply these principles ethically. Cialdini, a distinguished professor of psychology and marketing, spent years studying compliance professionals, salespeople, fundraisers, recruiters, to understand their methods. He identified 6 core principles that drive our decisions, often unconsciously. Get ready to uncover these powerful tools of persuasion and learn how to use them responsibly in your life. Cialdini opens the book with a confession. He's a patsy. He's always been an easy mark for salespeople, fundraisers, and anyone pitching a product or idea. This self-awareness led him to study compliance and the factors that influence our decisions. Through experiments, and by going undercover as a compliance professional himself, Cialdini discovered the 6 weapons of influence, psychological principles we encounter every day. The first weapon of influence is reciprocation, the deeply ingrained human tendency to repay what another person has provided us. It's a universal principle, present in every human society, and it fuels social advancements like trade and cooperation. We feel obligated to reciprocate favors, gifts, and invitations, often without even realizing it. This obligation can be surprisingly powerful, as seen in the example of Ethiopia sending relief aid to Mexico despite its own dire circumstances, simply because Mexico had helped them decades earlier. Compliance professionals exploit this principle through tactics like the free sample. By giving us something, a flower, a free sample, even an unwanted favor, they trigger a feeling of indebtedness, making us more likely to comply with their subsequent request. This can lead to unfair exchanges, as we saw in the experiment where people who received a free Coke were more likely to buy raffle tickets, even if they didn't like the person selling them. The Hare Krishna Society's tactic of giving a flower before asking for a donation is another classic example. To say no to reciprocation tactics, Cialdini suggests recognizing the true nature of the initial offer. If it's a genuine gift or favor, reciprocate appropriately. But if it's a manipulative tactic, redefine it mentally as what it is, a sales device, and you'll be free to decline without guilt. The second weapon of influence is commitment and consistency. We have a nearly obsessive desire to be consistent with what we've already done. Once we make a choice or take a stand, we face internal and external pressures to behave consistently with that commitment. Racetrack bettors, for example, become more confident in their horse's chances after placing a bet, not before. Commitment is the key to engaging this principle. Compliance professionals use various strategies to get us to make a small commitment, setting the stage for automatic and often ill-considered consistency with that initial commitment. This includes strategies like asking people to predict what they would do if asked for a favor, as seen in the American Cancer Society volunteer study. Another tactic involves seemingly trivial commitments like saying, "I'm fine," when asked by a phone solicitor, making it harder to appear uncharitable later. The foot-in-the-door technique, where a small initial request increases compliance with a larger subsequent request, demonstrates the power of commitment. Think of the study where homeowners who agreed to display a small "Be a Safe Driver" sign were later much more likely to agree to a large, unattractive "Drive Carefully" billboard on their lawn. The Chinese also used this principle in Korean War POW camps, starting with small, seemingly innocuous requests and escalating to more significant demands. Written commitments are particularly effective because they provide physical evidence and can be made public, further increasing the pressure to stay consistent. Consider how the Amway Corporation encourages its salespeople to write down their sales goals. Even seemingly trivial actions like filling out a sales agreement can strengthen commitment. To defend against manipulative consistency tactics, Cialdini advises listening to our gut feeling, that pit of your stomach feeling, and recognizing the difference between being consistent and foolishly consistent. When we realize we're about to comply with a request we don't want to fulfill just to be consistent, we should verbalize this to the requester. Next is social proof. We determine what's correct by finding out what other people think is correct. This is particularly true for behavior. We assume that if a lot of people are doing something, it's probably the right thing to do. This shortcut works well most of the time, but it also makes us vulnerable to manipulation. Canned laughter is a classic example. Even though we recognize it as fake, it still influences us to laugh longer and more often. Advertisers also exploit social proof by emphasizing that a product is fastest growing or largest selling, leveraging our tendency to follow the crowd. This is why charity telethons constantly list viewers who have pledged contributions and why bartenders salt their tip jars. The danger of social proof arises when the evidence is falsified, as with canned laughter or staged testimonials. Another risk is the pluralistic ignorance phenomenon, where everyone looks to others for cues in ambiguous situations, leading to inaction. The tragic case of Kitty Genovese, where 38 witnesses failed to intervene in her murder, illustrates this chillingly. To defend against manipulated social proof, Cialdini advises vigilance against counterfeit evidence. We should be skeptical of staged testimonials, overly enthusiastic crowds, and obviously fake endorsements. When possible, we should actively counterattack by boycotting products or services that use these tactics. The fourth weapon is liking. We prefer to say yes to the requests of someone we know and like. The Tupperware party is a perfect example. The real request doesn't come from the salesperson, but from a friend, the host, who profits from each sale. Other tactics include using a friend's name or claiming similar backgrounds and interests, leveraging our tendency to like people who are similar to us. Several factors influence liking, including physical attractiveness, similarity, compliments, and cooperation. Compliance professionals exploit these factors by making themselves appear attractive, similar to us, or by offering compliments and feigning cooperation. They often use flattery, even if insincere, to win our favor. Think of Joe Girard, the greatest car salesman, who sent every customer a card saying, "I like you." To defend against undue liking, we must be alert to the feeling that we've come to like the practitioner more quickly or more deeply than expected. Once we recognize this, we should separate the requester from the request and make our decision based solely on the merits of the offer, not the person making it. The next principle is authority. We are trained from birth to obey authority figures: parents, teachers, police officers. This obedience often occurs automatically, without much conscious thought. Authority figures usually possess superior knowledge and power, making it generally beneficial to follow their directives. However, this can also make us vulnerable to blindly obeying even when it makes no sense. The Milgram experiment vividly demonstrates this. Participants were willing to administer dangerous electric shocks to an innocent person simply because an authority figure told them to. The key finding was the surprising willingness of ordinary people to inflict pain on another when instructed by an authority. Authority is often symbolized by titles, clothing, and trappings like expensive cars. Compliance professionals often use these symbols, even without actual authority, to gain our compliance. Con artists often use titles like doctor or judge to increase their credibility. The study of nurses who followed a doctor's clearly erroneous orders over the phone illustrates the power of mere titles. To counteract undue authority influence, Cialdini recommends asking 2 questions. Is this authority truly an expert? And how truthful can we expect the expert to be here? Focusing on credentials and trustworthiness rather than mere symbols like titles or uniforms helps us avoid mindless obedience. The final weapon is scarcity. Opportunities seem more valuable to us when they are less available. This principle plays on our aversion to loss. We are more motivated by the thought of losing something than by gaining something of equal value. Collectors, for example, know that scarcity increases an item's worth. The limited number tactic, where a product is presented as being in short supply, is a common scarcity tactic. Deadlines, like limited time offers, also create a sense of urgency, making us more likely to buy. The story of the refurbished Mormon temple exemplifies this, as the author felt compelled to visit simply because access would soon become restricted again. Psychological reactance, our tendency to want what is restricted or unavailable, fuels the power of scarcity. When our freedom to have something is limited, we desire it more. This is why censorship often backfires, increasing interest in the banned information. Teenage reactance, like the Romeo and Juliet effect, also demonstrates this principle. To combat scarcity pressures, we should first recognize the emotional arousal they create. Use this arousal as a signal to pause and regain a rational perspective. Then, ask ourselves why we want the item. If we want it primarily for its utility, remember that scarcity doesn't increase its usefulness. The scarce cookies, after all, didn't taste any better. In conclusion, influence reveals 6 powerful principles of persuasion: reciprocation, commitment and consistency, social proof, liking, authority, and scarcity. These principles often act unconsciously, guiding our decisions in predictable ways. By understanding these principles, we can become more persuasive ourselves and, more importantly, become less susceptible to manipulation. Here are some easy-to-remember heuristics from Cialdini's book to help you navigate the world of influence. For reciprocation, is this a genuine favor or a manipulation tactic? For commitment and consistency, would I make the same choice again knowing what I know now? For social proof, is the crowd's reaction genuine or staged? For liking, am I liking this person more quickly than I should? For authority, is this authority truly an expert, and how truthful can I expect them to be? For scarcity, do I want this item for its utility or its scarcity? Thanks for watching. Have you read it? Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button so you never miss our next book exploration.